This is an audio test of the YouTube stream for the
Okay, good evening, good afternoon, everyone. Hello. How's everyone doing? Good, okay, so we're going to go ahead and call this meeting to order at 4:30 p.m. Next on the agenda is roll call. Okay, will the secretary please complete roll call?
Chair Payton, you can actually just say for the record that every
Everyone?
committee member is here with the exception of Mr. Nito.
Mr. Nito, okay. So for roll call, everyone is present with the exception of Mr. Nito. Next on the agenda is approval of the April 11th committee meeting minutes. If you could take a moment and review those minutes, please. There we go. Everybody's still kind of reading?
Do we need a motion to accept them?
Yeah, I was
I'll move.
watching everyone read. Okay, so could I have a motion to accept the minutes, please?
I move.
Okay. Could I have a second? Thank you. So were you able to receive who made the motion and who seconded? Okay, thank you. So next, I would like to go ahead
There needs to
and,
take a vote.
oh, I'm sorry. All right. So can we take a vote to approve the minutes of April 11th? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Minutes are approved. Okay, next on the agenda is public comment. Do we have anyone available for public comment? Okay, all right, so no one's available for public comment. We'll go ahead and move to the next agenda item. Let's see. Okay, so next on the agenda is dynamic mindfulness, and we'll go ahead and take a moment to start with dynamic mindfulness. If we can go ahead and prepare ourselves to focus for today's meeting. We want to go ahead and close our eyes. Put your arms forward. You want to take a breath in and out. Breath in and out. Last time, breath in and out. Thank you. So we want to make sure that we level set so we can focus on today's work. Next, we're going to focus on personal narrative. You can do that one? Okay, so Dr. Dialba is going to go ahead and take over for personal narrative.
All right, so for today, this one will be an individual one just because we have a lot on the agenda. But I want you to focus on that Chinese proverb that's up there. It says a crisis is an opportunity riding on a dangerous wind. And so just take a moment to think how that relates to our work, what we're doing. And I won't make anybody share, but we'll take about a minute just to kind of think about how we connect to that and connect to each other.
All right, so next on the agenda is a budget recap that Dr. Diallo will go over.
So I'll give you an overview just of the work that we've done so far, and then this will also be shared with our board at the next board meeting. Essentially, the first meeting, we discussed kind of our financial story in Phoenix Union. We discussed the role of the budget committee. Following that, the next meeting, we did a basic, and I'll say a very basic overview of Arizona school finance and its complexities. And then we started talking or reviewing kind of what, like, district priorities. Just a reminder, these are the two slides that'll be shared with the board. The role of the committee is really to collect data from community members on district priorities. Today will be, you'll actually look at the priorities and you'll do an activity with them. And then take that data, that feedback, and make a recommendation to the school board. The school board will then decide yes, or you know what, we want you to go back and look at it. If they say yes, then it moves on to the district, and the district will use that to essentially right-size the budgets. And so I want to remind that that's the focus, and one of the things that we discussed as a team was when we're making requests for data, they should really be focused or kind of think of how is this data that's being requested from, you know, the team, how does this continue our work focusing on priorities? And so that'll be something that we'll either ask if we can't make the clear connection, or you can share like, hey, I want this data because this is how it's connected to that work. We will be providing the data, some of the data requested in this meeting, and then sending it out to the rest of the committee as we get it. Understand that sometimes some of the data requested takes a while to compile, especially if it's, we certainly have raw data, but we need to be able to present it in a manner that is available to everybody so that everybody understands it, and then we can go back and forth. But always kind of remember, how does this data reflect the work that we're doing? Okay, so quick overview. Mr. Camp is unable to be here, but I will attempt to give a brief overview of his division. So as part of these budget committee meetings, I wanted to provide an overview of just different divisions and different things that we do. I think we were supposed to go on to the next agenda item, and I didn't. We're on the next agenda item, sorry.
Agenda item 7.
Yeah. So it was just an overview of teaching and learning division. And so what you have in your slideshow is essentially a summary, and we try to be as succinct as possible when this was created. But essentially, teaching and learning, right, is kind of the big division in our school district because we focus on student learning. And so they oversee student learning, CTE programs, assessment and accountability. When we talk about assessment and accountability, right, there's the data side and all the operations of the testing, but then there's also the instructional side and how is curriculum aligned to instructional practices in the classroom. They also oversee exceptional student services, which is also a large portion of that division. Essentially everything from transition plans to setting up like who are the caseworkers, how do we distribute these services throughout the district. It also encompasses professional development. So all the Super Saturdays that we have, different teacher induction programs, different training programs that we have, L&D days, there's also in professional development sometimes embedded through those days. So it's just professional development throughout the year. Something unique to our district is that we actually have professional development not only for certified and admin, but also for our classified staff. And then lastly, they oversee federal programs. So when we talked about federal programs, we're talking about Title I, Title II, all the entitlement grants that come in from the federal program. They see the programming side, so they'll say, this is how we're gonna spend the money, whereas finance does the bookkeeping, let's say. So any questions about teaching and learning that I can attempt to respond to? All right, so I think with that,
So we're still sticking with the same agenda, number 7, and I'd like to introduce Ms. Alyssa Tarkington, who's going to present on Student and Family Services. Thank you.
Daily basis with our template to keep it clean and succinct. But I think I'll just tell you a little bit about who we are, why we exist, and what we do. And so our division here at CEE is made up of 5 departments. We have about 30 staff members in our division, including 5 directors who oversee each of the departments that are listed. And we support throughout our campuses approximately 250 employees and lots of systems and structures to support students. And again, some are even in this room who work closely with us. And so, you know, I'm not going to read that to you, but I like to think of us, many people will talk about the Student and Family Services as helping to support the wraparound services for students. And so we help to either prevent or eliminate challenges that might be in students' lives so that they have optimal conditions for learning. And so when you think about that, I even kind of put them in that order. I always think about what order matters, but really on the left side of the slide, you really just start with prevention. And so that is really from the point that we're transitioning from 8th grade. We work really hard at a freshman success. I don't even call it an initiative at this point. It's just how we do business, really trying to get our students started off successfully. We have built-in structures. It's a very data-driven system of intentional work that we do, because research says that when students are successful in that freshman year, they are much more likely to graduate in 4 years. And so really, once they enter, getting them connected in sports, clubs, activities, but also engaging the family. And so Phoenix Union, certainly like many high schools, we have not arrived with family engagement, but we really work hard to have structure so that we can engage our families and support the whole unit, because we know if the family's doing well, the student is also. And so, you know, there are any number of interventions I've listed is, I believe, all but one group of folks that I forgot, and it's a smaller group, but we have one more group that we have one mighty person in that area. We're actually staffed for more than that as a regional intensive interventionist. And I bring that up because when we really look at interventions, it's tiered. So every teenager is going to have a challenge at some point. And so the most investment really should be in our prevention work. But really, we support everything from basic needs, behavioral needs, emotional needs, mental health needs. And we do that through the people that are on the campus and the work that they do. And so I won't be too long-winded, but happy to do whatever you all need to provide information or answer questions, if that's okay.
Just for clarity for the group so that we understand what it means, could you give us the definition, or rather what it means to when you reference MTSS? So I know what it means.
Should have spelled
yes,
that
thank
out,
you.
yes. So that's multi-tiered systems of support. So we have lots of systems in Phoenix Union. And so really it's outlining the ways that we integrate how we support students so that the right hand is talking to the left if a student is struggling. And that could be an academic need. So a student needs a reading intervention. How do they get that support? Or they're just not doing well in their classes. You've really tried to identify if is this something social going on? Is this something at home going on? What's happening? And so we have student support teams that wrap around more of the non-academic side. We have really redefined and uplifted again this year and are working to strengthen academic intervention teams. Is there a true learning issue going on? Or are there just some gaps and they need some reteaching and in a structured way so that everybody's on the same page? So I could go on, but I think that's probably enough.
Any other questions? No? Okay. Well, thank you, Ms. Tarkington.
You are so welcome. Thank you.
So next topic on the agenda is item 8, priorities activity. And Dr. Diallo will take us through that activity.
All right, so we're finally here. We'll start working on priorities. So I wanted to just give you guys a brief overview of the presentation that was presented to the campuses. I'll have Fernanda actually share it out because it's a PowerPoint with a recorded, 2-3 slides of me speaking in a very boring voice. But it's essentially, I start off with, this is an overview of school funding in Arizona, just like I did with the group on the first day. And then I share the enrollment slide, and this is where we're at. And then I share this is essentially based on the projections, how much money we look at reducing over the next 3 years. And then the principals that have done it worked with the staff on doing the priorities activity. Now, instead of doing a QR code, you should all have this in front of you or somewhere in your packet. And this is kind of where I'd like you to place your feedback. And the reason why is because we want to take it back, and this is really our work, right? So it's like, we'll get feedback from each of you, you'll be able to discuss it, and then we'll bring it up back and say, hey, this is the feedback, is this how you wanted it incorporated, or did I not, is it not correct, or do we need to change it again? But the idea is, these were predetermined. I think in one of the previous sessions that we had, somebody asked, well, how did you guys come up with these? Essentially, there's, kind of the logic behind this is there's ways that we have to report expenditures to the state. And so that was considered in one aspect, right? And then the other aspect is, well, what are the functions of our school district? Like, what are the areas that we have? This doesn't mean that it's an all-exhaustive list, right? It could be more, it could be less. And that's kind of our work here. Or, I don't recommend, but we might say, hey, we want to go back to the drawing board completely and get a different type of feedback, or do we want to get other feedback? So before I let you kind of give feedback on this, I do want to provide some preliminary data, just so you see the type of data that we're getting. And then we'll have time where you guys actually dive into this and read through them and kind of decide, okay, this is feedback, and then you guys obviously can have a discussion. So far, these are the school sites that have completed it. I believe those are all correct, yes. And so it's been done at a school site. I did it in the finance at our last admin meeting. And so when you look at that, it's mostly certified staff because it's been done at school site. And so as we go through this, one of the decisions will be like, how do we engage other groups? What other groups do we need to engage? But this is what we have so far. 563 employees have completed it. The majority are certified, and the smallest group is admin. And again, that is a smaller group on a campus, right, that's done it. This is the order in which they've placed the priorities. So notice the order that you have on your sheet is different. This is what people have been selecting. And so you can, they get a QR code and then they put it on their phone and they kind of, I want to move this one up and this one down. And so far, the majority have, I think as we probably all expected, right, student achievement and instructional services is the #1 priority, followed by student support services, then safety and security. Salary increases and benefit packages is #4. Facilities and operations. 6 is administrative services. 7 is community and family engagement. 8 is health and wellness. 9 is contingency, which is having a fund reserve, and sustainability, which I thought was interesting, but that's number 9 as a priority. And then number 10 is staff development. And so our role, right, is really to kind of look at, these are priorities, like do we need other data? Like what else do we want to collect? Do we want to refine them? There's definitions on this sheet, and they were given the definitions as well. That's the data so far. Something else that we asked was, what are your staffing priorities? Rank them in the order below. And so, the first priority is teacher staffing ratios, followed by classified, admin, and CE. For both sections, we did include a comment section. I will codify that data, so I'll go through it and then kind of say these are overall trends. Overall, it's positive data, objective data. There are some instances where they call things out, particularly like, I don't know what this person does. But you know, we're gonna get that, right? When we ask for feedback, we're gonna get all the feedback. I think the importance in doing this, and Mr. Silvas, if you can kind of highlight in the past, when we've gone through times when we've had to right-size the district or go through different RIF processes, I'll let you kind of fill in on what that process has been in the past.
Thank you, Dr. Diabla. So I'm going to go back a little bit, and when I go back a little bit, we're going to go back to about 2010. That was the last time that Phoenix Union really found themselves in a situation where they had to right-size the district. During that time period, all job families, classifications were reviewed and looked at, and then ultimately there were individuals that were RIFed, okay? And there might be individuals in this room that were RIFed, okay? And at that point in time, the state level, it became very clear that if there were going to be RIFs, there were different criteria for certified, classified, and also for the administrative ranks. And when you look at all those ranking pieces, especially when it came to credentialed, which included the certified and the administrative, it really looked at total years of service. Seniority wasn't just the only factor, so there's other factors that had to be taken into consideration, and even down to where it became timestamps of when board approved, how everything went through. It was pretty intense and was very detailed during that time. Now, a lot of those positions, a lot of the money that was saved was through natural attrition, okay, vacant positions, positions that hadn't been filled at those times, but it did impact numerous staff, okay, during that time period. And then those staff members were ultimately recalled within that year, or immediately or within that year, they were recalled back to positions because money became more available from the state and through it was through one of the overrides that happened that helped fund positions. So it's a very tedious process, but ultimately there's got to be criteria. If we find ourselves in that situation, there has to be criteria that's going to help determine which, how, and I guess I would say just how we're going to do this on that piece.
Something important also to add to that is that in terms of feedback, this is the purpose, right? Is for us to collect feedback. I think in the past there really was no feedback mechanism in a sense. It was just these are the decisions we're making, and this is the way that we're collecting feedback to right-size the budget, which is important because I think hearing from all our community groups is very important. I also want to turn your attention to the slide, to the graph. That is the average number of district administrators from 2008 to 2016. The average number of district administrators was about 36 or so. From 2016 to 2023, it went up to about 55, 56. And so there has been, a reorganization at the district level, and that number has since also, it fluctuates. And so it's important to think of that as well in terms as when we look at our enrollment and we look at different trends. And so that was a data piece that was asked to be shared, and I think it's appropriate to share it because we're asking people to rank, what is the order or what's the most important or priority, right, in terms of different staffing groups. And so just so that you guys have that information, it's also, it was a straight average. I didn't do any complex statistical analysis on it. It literally was an average on that. So let me see what the next one is, sorry. All right, so with that, what I'd like to do is give you some time to look through this. These are the priorities with the definition. We think it's important. I think the first time we did this activity with a group, there were no definitions, and then it became very obvious that we all have different definitions about everything. And so we thought it's important that we provide some guidance. So I think right now it's you prioritizing individually or together, and then we'll open the floor up for discussion so that we can collect data. I am gonna ask that each of you write feedback and where you're like, yeah, we should do this, or so that we can take this and codify it and then create a different one if needed. Or if you're like, yep, I agree with this one, I don't agree with whatever feedback you have, and then the floor at that point is also open for discussion. So take a moment to read through them and then kind of, gather your thoughts, and then we'll have a discussion about it. You guys will have a discussion. Do you guys think 5 minutes is sufficient to start, and then we'll check? All right, I'll put a timer so it'll keep us on track.
Would this be an okay time if I were to ask a question?
Yes, go ahead.
Dr. Dialba, this might be a data request for future. Is it possible to get dollar amounts attached to each of these priorities? Because it's kind of hard to prioritize if they're very different sized.
Yes, and we're actually working on that actively.
Okay. I'm sure that's a huge task. Yeah.
Yeah, it is. It's more defining. And then, like I said, we're trying to use as much as possible AFR data, just so that we can be as consistent as possible.
Okay.
But yes, we can work on that.
Yeah, thank you.
At the next meeting, I kind of wanted to take a deeper dive and do that.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Dialba. And Mr. Silvers, thank you so much for giving us a small history lesson, what happened in 2010, because that means a lot, because how much is a deficit, like Dr. Yalba, you coached us in the last 2 meetings, is not in our control. And what to be cut is more administrative process, which is not as transparent as this process. So truly bringing priorities through this committee and making it not only just transparent, but also educational to every employee as we take the hardest decisions in future. I think that is the most new innovative approach we are taking, something different and working hard. So just want to thank you for that. And I have a couple of questions. I really liked both teaching and learning and Ms. Tarkenton coming and giving introductions on the divisions. But if possible, because you kind of really gave a good example of last time budget, like federal, MNO, and is it possible when each division comes, at least say how much portion is in the same format, in the same pie chart, if I'm remembering well? I'm a good student, I hope my memory is good. The pie chart was good, but it would be good to know if a teaching and learning, if with all the things, what is their expenditure in that way, so that will be more transparent. Just a recommendation, again, I know it may be hard.
Yeah, can certainly work on disaggregating. Oh, that's my timer. Our time is up. We're moving on. Just kidding. I can certainly work on figuring out how to disaggregate that so that you guys have that information.
So I think we're ready to go into discussion and open the floor for any comments or feedback regarding the different priority areas that we just reviewed.
And really quickly, if you can, please write your feedback. I'll try to collect it as much as possible. But if there's something that you're like, this is something I feel really strongly about, please also write it so that we can collect these and analyze them at the next meeting.
I just had a question or comment, and I wrote it down. On the classified staffing ratios, just in the sense that I feel like there's a big difference between maybe instructional classified staff or versus the non-instructional. Like, I'm not sure, like if you had plumbers or custodians or other staff that are not maybe interacting as regularly with students, I'm not sure that that is a ratio that I am as concerned about as much as like if they're classroom instructional where they can actually help in the classroom. So that one when I was ranking, I'm like, well, I don't know if I need a lot of electricians to student ratio in there, but I would like, the assistants or something like that to have a higher ratio. So if that differentiator or how we look at that, I'm not sure, but it was hard to score it based on that.
So potentially putting classified instructional, classified non-instructional. I mean, we can add that.
Or just even like instead of teaching staff, instructional staff and then non-instructional staff.
And
if that kind of makes sense.
So make it broader. Okay.
Yes.
I would just note when we think about our classified staff, I consider all of our classified staff educators, whether they're in a classroom or not. And just to put things in perspective, our classified staff are the first ones to see our students when they get on the bus, first one they may see when they're entering the cafeteria for breakfast, last ones they see when they leave as our security are closing the gates. And so there are plenty of interactions with students and relationships and pieces of really educational pieces as far as like social and emotional well-being when it comes to our classified staff, having those relationships and encounters with our students on a daily basis. And I'd even argue that a lot of our students actually confide more in our support staff outside of the classroom than within. But
so thinking of and this is a clarifying question, like thinking of if we're collecting data from all our community groups, how would you suggest that that's captured here?
so I think this leads maybe to our next slide about our targeted groups. What other groups do we want to target for feedback? And I don't mean to jump the gun, I'm sorry. But I think when it comes to gauging participation and engagement from our classified groups, we need to be specific about which groups we're talking to. So there are 9 classified educational support professional career families. And most of those, our biggest, one of our biggest is clerical, as well as paraeducators, but ones that we often may not think about or forget to acknowledge is our food service, who many of them are Spanish speakers or multilingual. Additionally, our custodial and maintenance staff who have interactions with students every day. And they also serve as a vital piece when it comes to safety on our campuses. Additionally, our DSF classified staff, so folks like our IT staff that are now housed at our district support facility, skilled trades who may not be, like to your point, like we may not need, you know, so many electricians, but I like to think about, to consider square footage. So when we're talking about our buildings and things like that, how much area do they have to cover? Because if we're increasing in class sizes and then we're spreading, you know, across the buildings or whatever it may be, or are we downsizing? So just something to consider when talking about skilled trades and custodial maintenance is square footage of our buildings, as well as our safety too, square footage and coverage. And then transportation. So transportation is often forgotten about because they're not behind a computer, they're not on, you know, they're in a bus most of their day. And so during their downtime, if they have a split shift, they're convening back at the bus barn at DSF, and many of them may not have immediate access to, you know, a laptop or to some sort of device. Or what we found too is a lot of our part-time staff don't even know that they have a PXU email. So it's giving them the access and letting them know that it's out there and available, but also assisting them and guiding them through that process. Because again, a lot of our food service and our custodial maintenance staff are elderly, and so some of them may not be as tech savvy as the rest of us.
Ms. Schaefer?
Thank you. I am one of the staff members, the 563 staff members that answered this original survey. As a social worker, it gives me joy to see that number 1 and number 2 that were listed here were also the ones that are a priority. Learning, emotional and social needs, and then safety and security. It makes me think of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. When we are shedding away excess, what will stay behind are the things that maybe the students in the community needs, just from this, you know, simple survey. So it gives me joy to see it. And I wanted, it made me realize that while this is a new conversation that we're having with the community, with staff members, that at the core, it seems like we're aligned, right? So this is what I'm getting from the survey.
Thank you. I'd just like to add, is it possible to look at these priorities as combined priorities? So when we're looking at, let's say, student achievement, student support, safety, and community and family engagement, is it possible to combine those in a way because one speaks to the other, as was just mentioned? And so instead of seeing them as separate, is it possible to combine those buckets in a way to where we're looking at them as a collective?
I think that's a question for the committee. I do want to say that the difficulty in this work is that we do have to provide our board with priorities. And if, you know, we can certainly combine and say, hey, we're going to produce 5 priorities, because that, you know, and maybe it's like we use the same survey and then we total the data and then we say, here's like the groups that we recommend and how we recommend prioritizing. Understanding that like our role is to provide those priorities in the most, I think, clearest manner that represents what our community wants, or what their feedback says. And I think, you know, that's why it's important that, like, for that second part, like, thinking, well, how do we incorporate, like, other staffing groups, or other things? And I think, you know, right now, when we look at it, I don't believe anybody's surprised, right, that academic achievement is number one. We're a school. We were a hospital. It'd probably be like taking care of treatments with the student, with patients, right? So, yeah, that's something that we can decide as we move forward. I think for this activity, I guess we've surveyed schools. We're gonna have next Friday, I believe, is an LND. Whenever the next LND day, the rest of the schools will do it. And so, yeah, okay, so this Friday, the rest of the schools should finish it. There's a couple that I think needed a little bit more time, so we'll have more data. But really, this is data that you're gonna take, and if you feel that it needs, as a committee, if you feel like, hey, I think we should combine these two, or I think we need to do this, that's kinda, you guys will have to decide that.
Mr. Williams?
I think this activity, something that, for me, I feel like it's highlighting is the complexity of this. And I know staff, when they're doing the drag and drop, I can't read people's minds. I don't know exactly how they're interpreting, but I could see this be something that people might feel like whatever we rank the lowest, those are gone. And I like metaphors. So I feel like we can't put ourselves in a situation where it's like, we want to save money on this road trip, so we get rid of the wheels on the car. And so if we just get rid of some of these, as you pointed out, all functions are essential that are happening. So I'm feeling like the question about the pie chart, that how much do each of these cost? This is impressing upon me the need to look at this at kind of scaling down potentially in every area, but having the least impact on kids, and we don't want to decrease our effectiveness as a whole. But I feel like the ranking is still maybe a little bit confusing, just because I can't say which one of these is not important, because they all are.
Right, and that's understandable, and we'll have that data available, but I do want to remind, again, that we will not be choosing the reductions here. We're simply, this is the data we received, and as a committee, we've decided that these are the district priorities, and then we're presenting that to the board. And so that data is important, and it'll, you know, we have a draft of it right now. Understand that when we have data in our system, it's not, and Mr. Thompson can probably attest to this, it's not as simple as just, you know, this is the data that I'm pulling. So we're working on how to best represent it accurately based on the definitions. And so by the next meeting, we should have it available. And then I'll go through, like, this is how it was calculated, just so that everybody kind of has an understanding, like, this is what we're looking at. Yes?
Follow-up question. So will the board only be receiving, these are the priorities, that's it? Like, is it going to be that boiled down and simple, or would it be potentially something else that we would write up of?
Yeah, of course there's other feedback, but the major part is, like, these are the priorities, this is how we came up with the decision, here's other considerations. I mean, I don't think that they'll, you know, I think that there's receptiveness to everything, right? And I think that that's important, right? Telling the story of how y'all came up with that data.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Dr. D'Alba. Again, I think this is a first good attempt to take the feedback from the larger community of staff. But Ms. Jimenez, you did a wonderful job. What happens, knowledge is the power. It's like almost a pre and post test. I can take the same thing without hearing you, and then I hear you and take the same ranking order. The part of when we, you know, each system of surveys have their own, you know, challenges. You know, Dr. D'Alba, you may know about it, a little bit more fresh. But those are the challenges. You know, when colleagues are taking it before hearing maybe a couple of budget meetings, or after taking, you know, kind of thing. I feel when we are getting this live data on this kind of things, and this committee is discussing it, I think we have to like kind of examine that risk. It may be a guiding document, but not just like a poll that you take on TV shows. You know, these are the top 10 things that people voted for. You know, there is a risk, right? We need to really discuss I think that's a committee would take that responsibility, kind of filter that data, discuss deeper, right? And even I feel that, I know it may be an extra work, but still, is there another different format of, again, doing one more feedback, maybe after coming back from the break kind of thing? Because at least from my side, and I think colleagues who are working in Phoenix Union, people are already turning and hearing this budget committee. They are getting interested. And one thing is true, the most impacted group will be the employees. And the anxiety is clear, right? So their interest is turning on, they are following the conversations we are all having. So when they take the survey, some schools have taken before, and then they heard it, this kind of ranking system. So this committee also discussing, yes, it's a good first step, but can we have different types of feedback? Maybe. Thank you.
Yep, and I think that right now, right now is the time to discuss it, so that next time we come together, and I mean, we'll probably discuss it next time as well. It's not a one and done, but that's kind of the goal right now is like, how else would you like this to look? Do we want it to look different?
So I think going back to combining the areas, it would be nice, because I know right now with board goals and the direction that the district is wanting to go with family engagement and safety, it would be wise to look at those buckets together and maybe make a recommendation based on those buckets combined rather than separated out as two. So having those numbers available for each of those areas would be extremely helpful, and then being able to make the groupings match, like Ms. Schaefer was saying, so that we can see those numbers attached with groupings that make sense. Because right now, seeing them separate, a lot of things are running through my mind, just working in the district, understanding board and district goals, the direction the district has been moving in, and the work that we need to do. A lot of these things are enmeshed, and they can't be separated out just based on a particular amount in each area. So if we could look at maybe what some of the groups would look like I was saying, safety and family engagement, it seems like that goes hand in hand. Student achievement and student support services, that looks like it goes hand in hand, and maybe grouping them so we have the smaller groups, so we're not looking at 9 individually, but looking at the combination of the ones that actually best pair together. I don't know if anyone else may feel that way or have some feedback regarding that, but looking at them separately in 9 distinct areas makes it a little harder to figure out the direction we should go. Mr. Williams.
Thank you. I think I'll speak for myself. I think that something that would help me, like the descriptors are helpful. Initially, when it was just the terms for the categories, I think that's harder for people to understand exactly what health and wellness means. Like there was a mention of like, does this mean health benefits versus different? But this adds complexity, so I'm sorry. But if there was some kind of statement of, if this were deprioritized, it could look like blank. If this were prioritized, it could look like blank. So within salaries, that kind of thing, if this were deprioritized, it could look like freezing raises. It could look like not filling vacancies. Just so people know, if this is deprioritized, what that could actually look like. Because I can picture that easier with salaries than I can with things like health and wellness.
And combining them, I think is appropriate.
Okay.
I worry about that.
Okay.
Because then now we're saying,
Like
if we
predetermining.
deprioritize this, it means we're cutting this.
Oh, okay, yeah.
And that's not our goal. But I think combining them, as you mentioned, where it's like, I think Ms. Schaefer mentioned it, like, student support services is important, right? And thinking of Maslow's hierarchy, right? We we know, right, as educators that this is the importance of things. And I think that'll help. And certainly providing this is how much money is spent in those. Here's how much the buckets are.
Yeah.
I do worry about saying, if we deprioritize, I'm just gonna say safety, because I think we all agree that safety is important. If we deprioritize safety, it means X, Y, and Z. I think that that kind of veers us away from the overall goal.
Yeah, okay.
Ms. Schaefer?
I'm seeing this as a stool that has 3 legs, staff, students, and the community. And I'm envisioning, once we have all of the data, either providing the board with the 5 top for each group, for each stool, leg, staff, community, and students. I would like to think that it would look the same, but it may not. And I really feel that the people that are going to be the most impacted is the community and students. So
Again, something else to add to what we've been talking about. Oh, just a second. Ms. Jimenez, you can respond, and then Mr. Perful had something to say.
Yeah, just to add to that, so thank you.
Already I'm at 100 calories, and right? And then we have to still make cuts, it's the system itself. But also, one thing I really like, the couple of things with the opportunity for each community member, may it be students, like you said, students also need, but I feel that in that detail.
I have a lot of things in there. Some things I could cut out, and I'd be just fine. But there's a group of expenses that are necessary. And when I look at my eating out budget, I often see that that's greatly inflated. So that proportionality is a place for me to cut. Also the calories. But then, like, there's other places that are necessities that if I cut those, it's going to affect a lot of other places. Maybe my prescription drugs, right? Maybe there's a place I can go and find them at a cheaper cost.
But the other person that's there thinks that we do need Starbucks every day. And so I think that's, if in your guys's, as you're bringing this up, if you can write even on the back, like, here's some ideas on, I think, how we can compare. And so that would be helpful as we collect the data. Sorry for interrupting you.
All right, thank you. So when I'm looking at these, I see a lot of 1s and 2s, and like there aren't a lot of 10s or 9s and 8s in here. Like everything is important, and as everyone has said, they're kind of interrelated. You can't have student achievement without physical and mental well-being of students. So it's hard to rank those on an extent. But I am a little worried if we group into too few groups, then it's hard to really prioritize at that point. So I'm not opposed to grouping some of them, but my worry is because everything is important and everything is kind of interrelated, if we group them all together too much, then it's hard to identify where we would really go to get that. But I think Mr. Doherty's point about the leanness is a great aspect, because maybe we can cut from this area that we think is really important, but maybe it's not efficient to have a 2-to-1 teacher to student ratio, for example. Like maybe we could have a few more students in there, just exaggerating on that one, but areas like that where maybe we're a little out of the standard. So if we could get maybe some different benchmarks or baselines of other high school districts, that could be helpful to say, okay, this is their ratio, or this is how much they're spending versus what we're spending.
And so using AFR data, the advantage is that we can pull in the specific codes for each of these, and I can do that by the next meeting to have a few different high school districts, and then just say, this is the data that's pulled from their system. Not using it, like just using our internal system would make it difficult because I would have to know someone in their district. But this AFR, think of it as your taxes, sort of. So like everybody submits this, and so that's where we can pull that. So certainly I think having that data, that way you can all compare and say, hey, this is where it's at. So just for my clarity for the next time, or the next time we meet and I bring this, what do we want, what do you want me to do with the list? Do you want me to combine it, not combine it? I know we want money and we want comparisons, but what would you like me to do with the list?
Ms. Renning?
I think just because about half of our district has already done it this way, I think like changing it prior to that is probably not a good idea. So I think like getting this data and getting this information all the same from everybody is important. I do agree probably then making a change and to Praful's point of like, and then we do another temperature check, right? So we see how it comes back, and then again, do we need to combine things? Do we need to separate things out, and just making that check again? So I would, I guess, wait to do anything with this until at least our next meeting would be my suggestion.
Mr. Williams?
I like the idea of ultimately combining. I think when we make the recommendations to the board, I think it could be appropriate for us to combine them, hear the trends that we're seeing. I like the point also about keeping the separated categories for now would help me, like your point as well, to see how much is being spent in each category, so that when we make the recommendations, it could potentially say maybe this one maybe seems a little bit large and could be decreased, but it's not a throwaway kind of thing. I have a question as well. In our recommendations, because we want to stop the decrease of students. We want to hold on to the students we have. We ultimately would love to increase. And there are charters opening all the time. So if possible, this is a data request, and let me know if this is not the work of this committee, but I would love to know where our kids are going. So I know that it's possible to run reports if this is just an idea and it becomes a side project, but it's possible to run reports to see where kids have gone, and there's a code for kids who have exited the district, I believe. So we can go into ADE and see if they've stayed in state, which charter they've enrolled in. And I'm curious, even if we don't have exit survey data with students who have left, if we can find out if they're heading to programs that they might not know we offer, really similar programs. I'll call out the fact that I'm going to be a small school principal, so I'm aware of that. But I know that we have kids who leave because they say, I want to go to a smaller school, and they don't know that we offer small schools. Or we have so many kids who leave to go to alternative programs and don't know that we have alternative programs. Oh, it's so far I can't get there. They don't know that we have a bus that goes there. So as we look at cutting funding, I'm a little bit afraid of cutting services and potentially losing some quality and then losing kids even quicker.
Yeah, and I can definitely talk to our data team to see how we can pull that data, and I think that's an overall concern. I think the analogy you made of the vehicle, right? It's like to operate a vehicle, we need all these things. It's just how does it look? Because we don't want to, have this massive shift and then we lose even more enrollment. So I think that's where there has to be a balance on that stuff.
Really quick, if you don't mind, if I jump in really quick, and then Ms. Schaefer will speak. My question is in relation to considering the time. Just keep in mind if there's anything on this list that you feel we need to add, if there's anything that maybe we want to look at, and I know we've been mentioning things here and there, but kind of keep that in mind as we move forward with this discussion. Ms. Schaefer?
Dr. D'Alba, I think we have about 20 days before our next meeting. Do you think it would be possible by then to have at least some data from families and students to look at?
I think that's important. I can certainly ask school sites, and we can even because the survey data can go out. I think we can send the survey out, and that's actually probably a lead way. Hold, please, go ahead. But yes, because that's the next decision-making thing, so we can talk about that then.
So I was wondering, as we've discussed the limitation of surveys and the perception, and I just want to throw it out there that I'm willing to do the legwork and spearhead this and just have a Phoenix Union person oversee me. I was wondering if it would be possible to host some kind of event for staff to come and meet with us as kind of like a PD type of structure. Maybe we go over with them the role of the budget committee, do some like get to know you activities. I would like to have all stakeholders involved, so maybe do an activity where, yeah, what is this perception of what this group does, what that group does, and then maybe do some divided, well, what is priorities for your group? Just like you gave us so much insight, it would be nice to have a voluntary opportunity, maybe during summer for those of us who are available. We could do something like that. I've written a PD for the district, so I'd be willing to do initial legwork, and then anyone willing to collaborate or show up, we could do that. But as another way to get actual interaction and not just a ranking system and some comment options, real live face-to-face interaction, I was wondering if that could be something we could look at organizing.
Do we want to move to the next one? Is everybody okay moving? Because then that's, yeah. So I think, go ahead, I'll let you, and then we'll address Ms.
Right, okay, so next on the agenda is identifying those groups to survey and making sure that we kind of confirm that up before we exit today. So I'll open the floor for discussion.
So before that, I think Ms. Schaefer's comment was to get community feedback. So the survey's created. I can definitely translate it, and I can even do the speaking in Spanish myself, and ensure that it's as understandable as possible for our community. And so would you suggest maybe doing like a blast where we send it out and see how many parents? I know in talking to principals, a lot of them have already had their cafecitos, and I don't know if the principals that are here can, and I don't know that they have any other parent engagement besides like graduation, right? But that'd be kind of graduation, here's a survey. But I mean, definitely we can use like Parent Square to send something out to all the community and see what we get. And I can work with marketing to do that as a first try and see like, hey, let's see what that data. And what I can do is I can use a different link. That way the data's separate. And we have it, separate, and we can disaggregate it. So I don't know if what your thoughts are on that.
That would be perfect.
Okay.
In a lot of ways, it feels like we're rushing, but in a lot of ways, we do have to rush, right?
Right.
So whatever information or whatever input that we can gather from students and their guardians would be helpful, even if it's, not perfect.
Okay. Yeah, I can definitely work on that.
I'd like to address the public forum aspect and how well we're actually promoting the public forum and the opportunity for people to participate, because it is happening at 4:30 to 6 o'clock. So I'm not too sure what more we could do to help maybe promote the fact that maybe we can receive information in another form other than showing up for public forum. Maybe, unfortunately, putting it back on principals and campuses, inviting parents and staff to participate in public forum in a way that we could receive questions or information that we could address during our meetings.
And so I think to your point, Ms. Galas, I think it was a recommendation or a suggestion to have a couple, right, during the summer, understanding that it can't just be me. I'm just gonna say that. I'm obviously willing to be there and talk about it, and I can explain things in English and Spanish. Unfortunately, those are the only two languages that I know. I would need assistance, and I think it would be the work of the committee to do that.
Ms. Jimenez, and then Mr. Williams, and then Ms. Galas.
Just to offer some suggestions when obtaining responses or engagement with this survey. One thing that we've done in the past, and I don't know if it's permissible, and I know we have some payroll folks, finance folks in the room, but when we promote certain things to at least our classified staff or those that have to clock in and out, we put a message on there indicating meeting dates or events that the district is hosting, as well as, you know, the mass emails that go to our district. We all get not to say that we're using our safety things for this, but we do get those safety text messages for our staff. And then again, just, you know, being mindful of the languages that our staff speak. So of course, Spanish, but I don't know if it would be too much work to offer it, and, you know, Portuguese, French, or anything that, I don't know what what other languages are predominantly spoken by our staff members, but I know for sure offering it in English and Spanish. And then additionally, utilizing, like mentioned, our marketing department. So kind of seeing it as like sort of like a campaign. You know, hey, we would love your input, you know, flyers, emails, text messages, hitting people where you may not think they are. So in those break rooms, in those, you know, back out in the, you know, the baseball field where our maintenance are, or just some of those spots where we may not be considering that staff are, because again, some of our staff members, they do have students within our schools too, so it would be really helpful to gauge their insights as parents as well. I feel like I'm missing something, but I'll leave it at that, so thanks.
Yeah, thank you. I know at campuses, admin are used to getting, you know, ongoing data about survey completion rates. So at each campus level, I know like DSF has a lot of classified staff, and that would not really be something that'd be resolved with this idea, but on-campus classified staff, like the trip reduction surveys, we get those over and over and over, and we keep reminding staff and finding ways to make time for them to complete surveys. So if principals were to receive, hey, here's how many people from your campus, certified, admin, and classified, have completed, if a principal were to say, like only 20 of my teachers and only 3 classified, like I'm gonna email them again now, or I'm gonna make an announcement in a staff meeting, or, you know, that I think it'd be easier for locally for people to push staff to complete this, take it seriously, provide their input. We also can't force people to provide their input. And I do know, I've been at a lot of the like road shows and listening sessions around the district, and they tend to be very lightly attended, even things that are very important topics. And I think a lot of that is just difficulty of I'm a single parent, like, you know, getting up, and like, I understand once you're home, it's kind of hard to leave again. And so opportunities to provide input, like the virtual input, we haven't had anybody. So I don't know how well promoted that is, that people can do public participation, that kind of thing. I like your idea of working with the marketing department and making sure that it's really very positive, because with wanting to stop losing students, it makes me a little bit nervous about sending out a text saying, hey, we're cutting a lot of money. Where should we cut it from? That doesn't build a lot of confidence if they get that as a blasted text, especially with how much it's in the news, places closing schools. I wouldn't want to suddenly cause worry and then have more families go look at other options outside the district. So I think marketing's really good at handling that delicately and very positively. You said it well, of like, hey, we really value your input, but just making sure people don't start thinking this is something to worry them long term.
I think because we have about 15 minutes and we have to finish by 6. Maybe the action item, a motion be to, I think, survey parents in some capacity, and do a blast to campuses, and then using the payroll system, or some type of system where employees that clock in and out. And then I think for the community, we probably, I don't know that we have enough time to discuss it in the next 14 minutes. I don't know if that can be an agenda item at the next one. So I don't, do you want to?
So I think at this point, I just would like to make a motion so we can move forward. So at this time, based on the discussion and the feedback we received, I'd like to move to expand opportunities to survey our current stakeholders by utilizing marketing and carrying the discussion over to work with summer opportunities.
You need a second.
I was making sure there's no question.
I
Is there a
second.
Thank you. So a second by Ms. Galaz. All in favor? Any nays? Abstentions? Okay, motion passes. Thank you.
Did that motion include the blast to the principals?
Yeah, so
Okay.
Communicating with campuses.
Is there room for discussion, or are we with that approved?
That was just approved. We would have to go back and undo that vote if there's going to be further discussion.
No, but could I add just a comment when we're discussing summer opportunities for participation? So just something to be mindful of, our classified staff, not all are 12-month. So the last contract day, I believe, for our 9-monthers are May 23rd or 24th, sometime around there. So just if we're expecting participation from our classified folks, that's why I suggested the TCP messaging and the blast, just to capture as many folks as possible before they leave for the summer.
Thank you. So next on the agenda is discussion of our next scheduled meeting date.
So I think for the next agenda, I think it's probably gonna be working more like, hey, here's the data that we were able to collect, this is the actions we did, this is where we're at, and then trudging through that data. But if you wanna go over.
Yeah. So next we have to take a look at our next meeting date, which is May 14th, to review priorities and the activity with the survey. I know it was brought up if whether or not we needed a retreat or a half day on May 30th. And then also what it is that we would like to do in preparation, because September is around the corner. So is there any questions regarding our next meeting date of May 14th? That's good. Okay. So are we making a motion to accept the next meeting date of May 14th?
I think that was already.
Is that was already there, correct? Okay. So now we need to look at the possibility of having a retreat on a half day on May 30th.
And it doesn't have to be May 30th, but, I mean, and that can also be shifted considering that we don't have that
Much time.
time.
Mhm.
So you guys can also,
Yeah.
I think so. Would it be possible to send that feedback into your office on what would be best for the possible retreat, if we need a retreat?
Yeah, would it be helpful if we send a survey like we did last time, where it was like, A, do we need a retreat? If we do, what are days that people are available?
I think
Yes? Okay.
if we're committing to a half day, could we have in there maybe what discussion items there would be? It just says survey, data review, and budget priorities activity. It's hard to picture that taking a half day.
I agree, and I think that's why I was saying maybe on the 14th to see where we're at, how much data we have, to see like, do we really need a half day, or can we just do another afternoon? Because we may have at the next meeting, we may have a lot more questions, or we might be like, okay, this is where we're at.
Mr. Larson?
Keep in mind that you're floating the date of May 30th, and that is the first Friday of our 10-hour schedule that we are off.
Yes. Do you want to address that?
Yeah, and to have, I think that's why maybe at the next one we have to decide, like, because we could also, instead of doing a half-day retreat, we can also choose to like, hey, let's make 14, because hopefully we'll have more data, a little bit longer, and then we can have more time to analyze and then see, do we need more time? So, but one thing that did come in is, because the retreat, we can kind of decide at the next meeting if you guys want, but this one, the votes for regular meetings next year for the days. Remember, we had talked about having a consistent day. It's, the majority were second and third Thursday. So that is something that you might be able to vote on right now, or again, we can table it to the next time. I don't know if it's gonna take more than 5 minutes to make a decision.
Yeah, I think we just need to table the half-day discussion until we meet on the 14th, and then go ahead and have a motion to decide on the second or third Thursday. Mr. Larson, did you want to?
Keep in mind, please, that third Thursdays are CEA meeting.
Second or the last Thursday?
Not the, okay. So it's the second or the last Thursday, not the third Thursday. So second or last Thursday. So we would need a motion for the second or the last Thursday for next year, our meeting dates. Could we have a motion?
I motion for second Thursday.
Okay. Is there a second for second Thursday?
I'll second that.
Okay, Mr. Williams, second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any nays? Abstentions? Okay, so meeting next year, it will be the second Thursday. Thank you. Okay, so could I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
I'll second that.
Okay,
Thank you.
adjourned. 5:53 p.m. Thank you.